So it's become my custom in recent years that when I do a review, a book review for publication, I also do a less formal review. And the reasons for that are twofold. One is it just takes a long time sometimes for a book review to get into print. And so if you're the author and you're wondering how your work was received, sometimes you're not seeing the first reviews until 2 years maybe after you've submitted it. Uh, and it's been published. And the other reason is often the books that I look at are going to be um, people in the popular audience might be interested in them. And so I want to often review them from the perspective of what if I'm not a specialist in the subject. And so today I want to talk about a particular book that I've reviewed for Speculum called Medical Texts in Anglo Saxon Literary Culture. Now, this is not going to be a really full review like the one that I'm publishing, or that Speculum will be publishing, I assume next year. But like I said, things are slow. Normally, I'd be waving around here the physical book because of COVID. Instead, they sent me, you know, uh, I think a PDF copy or an EPUB copy. Anyway, an electronic copy of it. And so, Medical Texts in Anglo-Saxon Literary Culture by Emily Kesling. I really devoured this book. I really loved the book. She is a really thorough and wonderful scholar. I don't believe I've met her. Um, I do hope to, after reading her great work, I do hope to the next time, medieval scholars gather together in a physical space, because her work is really quite wonderful. And so most of the book is really not going to be. First of all, the price point is high for non-scholars, right? It's $99. So unless you are a specialist in this, you're probably not going to want it for your personal library, but you might look for it in your university library, uh, you know, as a resource for something. Or sometimes, if you're a student, you might be able to get your university library to get it. Um, and so the first four chapters are each one about one of the manuscripts, and she does really good and interesting work in there. And I'm going to kind of skip over that because for the general audience, it's not going to be, I think, as valuable. Sorry, it would be valuable, but you're not going to be able to understand it very well. But it's the fifth chapter, which is simply entitled Medicine in Anglo-Saxon England. I think that one is one that if you are if you have an interest in this topic, and you're not particularly trained as a medieval scholar, you don't know a bunch of dead languages, when I was describing the manuscripts before, you had no idea really what I was talking about. Uh, I think that's the one that's going to be interesting and valuable to you, that chapter. Because what she does is she talks about how medicine was thought about in uh, you know in the kind of cultural space of Anglo-Saxon England. She acknowledges that though some church fathers do talk about um, kind of over rely, kind of ignoring the kind of spiritual components only for the physical components of medicine. Uh, that sometimes that's been often overstated. That like there was some sort of crazy hostility between the church and the in the practice of medicine, and uh, and to be honest, those of us who studied it academically, I think, find that general idea that the church was out to like get rid of all physicians or something um, wildly wildly inaccurate. You do find a few statements by church fathers saying like, "Don't forget prayer," that kind of thing. But in the chapter before, she really connects one of the manuscripts with the Benedictine reform. Medicine really finds itself clustered around monasteries in a lot of ways, both in terms of the growing of the ingredients, the collection of knowledge, that kind of thing. So it's kind of she does, I think, do a good job of putting that to bed, that idea. The other thing I think that she does a good job of is really talking about the ideas of witchcraft and then ideas of like things being elf shot or other sorts of what we would think of as mysterious or supernatural causes of disease and demonology. So it's very good. The whole book is good and interesting. And if you're a scholar of medieval medicine, I'm going to highly recommend it to you. But if you're just the popular person who's watching this video and you think, I'm interested in this, if you can get your hands on that, I would suggest, the 5th chapter is really the one that you're going to find interesting. Now, before we go, I do want to talk about one element because I can't leave this out. And there's a medieval manuscript called Bald's Leech Book, which I know most of you don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. And in an earlier published work, I argued that that we can distinguish, because of the writing styles, we can distinguish at least 2 different writers in it. And she addresses what I said, and she refutes what I said. And what she writes here is differences between the 2 books of Bald's Leech Book have fostered some speculation over their origin and compilation. Noakes, that's me, has put forward the suggestion that there was no single individual masterminding Bald's Leech Book, but at least 2 principal writers with discernibly different styles. He posits a writer A, who wrote most of Book 1, and seems to have influenced writer B, who wrote the greater part of Book 2. Right? Noakes supports this theory with rhetorical analysis of the text, but his conclusions are undermined by the fact that he focuses on the Old English text alone, does not examine its Latin source material, which is true. That wasn't the scope of what I was looking at. And I can't, the rest of it, I'm not going to she I think has correctly said what I do and why she objects to it. And then after that, she gives her argument, which involves knowing some Old English and knowing some Latin. So I'm not going to go into it here. And she argues in this part of the chapter that what I'm perceiving as 2 different writing styles is in fact 2 different writing styles, but the 2 different writing styles come from 2 different, ways it's written about in Latin sources. That's essentially what she is suggesting. She doesn't say that they are that there wasn't at least 2 different writers. In fact, she says later on she thinks probably it was a group project. But she does say that in that one place where I make this argument, that part of my argument is wrong. And after reading what she's written here, I agree with her. I think that when we look at this other context, what I was perceiving is real, but it wasn't coming from where I thought it was. So I agree with what she has said, and so I still stand by everything else I wrote in that. I still think it's true, but that bit of rhetorical analysis that she objects to, her objections, I think, are right. Anyway, so she's persuaded me that I was wrong on some point, and if there's any sign of a successful book, I think that's one of them. So if you are a scholar and are waiting for the full-on review of this, it should be coming out in Speculum, I think in 2021. But if you are, like most of you, not scholars, and you are interested in the subject, I'd recommend laying hands on this book and getting yourself to chapter 5, which is going to be the one that you like. So, Medical Texts in Anglo Saxon Literary Culture by Emily Kesling, a very good book, and I do recommend it.